Mr. Jim Meyn.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Commissioners, David. I'm here on behalf of Palacios Marine Agricultural Research. I spoke at the last commission meeting. We run the only production hatchery in Texas for oysters. And as you all know, the oyster season has opened up again for harvest. And similar to last year, we've had pretty poor survey results that have led to a very few number of oyster harvesting zones being open for production. The reasons for this decline are numerous and divisive, but I think we can all agree that this is a pretty big Texas-sized problem that we're facing. Threatens our historic commercial fishery, threatens the health of our bays. I think we need to take some bold steps now to ensure a sustainable commercial fishery, to restore our oyster stocks, and to improve the quality of our bays. PMAR was built for this purpose. We're not trying to compete with other organizations. We're here for Texas waters. We're here to help oyster restoration projects, the oyster fishery, and even the new mariculture oyster industry. Next year, we can produce 300 million oysters out of our hatchery. Compare that to the estimated 50 million that were harvested this last season, or the 1 million that are coming off of the new industry of mariculture. That is a substantial number of oysters. Those oysters could be used to replenish our public reefs. They could be used to help restore or recover bays that have been threatened by storms or fresh water, like Galveston just this summer. They could be used to seed certificates of location and help expand the bottom fishery on private property, either for commercial purposes or for restoration purposes. We understand that right now the department is actually working on legislation that will allow for the deployment of our oysters, our hatchery-raised oysters, for these purposes and others to be determined. I'm here today to ask for your blessing to pursue a 4-acre research reef opportunity, where we would at least like to use the time that we have now to test restoration strategies, spat on shell, direct setting, and other methods, so that when we do have the legislative authority to use our oysters for restoration, we already have a plan in place to effectively use them. I think we should continue to work together to turn the tide on this oyster problem. Thank you for your time.
Great, thank you. You can produce 300 million oysters a year?
Yes, sir.
And at what size can you produce them?
Well, I can grow them up to about a piece of sand.
A piece of sand.
A piece of sand. And in restoration applications, the typical application is you would put them on existing oyster shell. You put oyster shell in a tank, it's called spat on shell, and you would let the oysters attach to that shell and put it out on preset areas in the bay, much like they do in the Chesapeake. We're hoping to extend the research on a new, cheaper method of restoration called direct setting that allows you to take that same animal before it's attached out to a prepared area and deposit it on reef, substrate, shell, and they have proven in a pilot level in the Chesapeake that it can be effective. The value of pursuing that method and proving it on a reef scale is the cost savings is tremendous. And as you've heard about the cost of substrate from the restoration folks here today, cost is one of the biggest inhibitors of all of our restoration goals. And so we'd like the opportunity.
So you could potentially put like spat on a degraded oyster bed and it'll cultivate and grow?
Technically it would be called larvae at that stage, but yes,
okay.
Sir.
All right. Okay.
Just for the record.
And PMAR is funded by the Rochelle
yes, sir.
family?
It's fully funded by the Ed Rochelle Foundation, who
100%. 100%. What's your budget a year?
I just set the budget this year. Our operating costs are about $2.5 million.
$2.5 million. And your facility is where?
It's located in Palacios, Texas. It's Matagorda Bay, mid-coast.
Okay, we may come see it sometime.
I would welcome you all to come see us, and I've actually been in the process of getting various department staff to come visit us. In December, we'll have the ecosystem leads from the 3 bays closest to us.
Great. Thank you very much for your work.
Thank you for your
I
time.
have one quick question. In that direct set method, do you have any numbers on the percentage you take? Like what's actually getting set versus what's washing away?
Yeah, so there's been 2 studies led by Dr. Jason Spires. One study by Dr. Spires, which led off of a U.S. Navy study. They're both published. I'd be happy to share those reports with you. And they found lower set success rates than in a remote setting where you put spat on shell in a tank. But given the reduced cost, we're talking 5 cents on the dollar, maybe less. I can take 1 million oysters out to a reef in a coffee cup that are in an eyed larvae state, versus spat on shell, materials handling, cost of the tanks, cost of the barge, cost of the spray down. It's worth studying, and I think we should get started.
It certainly is.
How long does it take a grain of sand to grow to a 2-inch oyster?
In Texas waters, it's 10 to 12 months.
Oh, wow.
Potentially faster if it's gone into a nursery that is a force flow system. We have an advantage in the Gulf generally over the Northeast and the Northwest in producing a really high quality oyster at the top of the water column in terms of mariculture that competes with anything I've ever had on the East Coast.
Great. Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you, sir.